Hi there, welcome. This is the Kelly's Astrology podcast, where you can find insight, guidance, and understanding through astrology. I'm Kelly, and I'll be your host. Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Kelly's Astrology podcast. In today's show, I'm super excited to share with you about a planet that is going to be changing signs. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. We are looking at the astrology of the week starting January 4th. And even though there are a few planets changing signs this week, the one that I'm really looking forward to, which is what I'll talk about today, is Mercury. So Mercury will be moving into Capricorn. And that's happening midweek, Wednesday, January 8th. One of the reasons I'm excited about this particular sign shift by Mercury is that unusually Mercury has spent the last 2 months in the sign of Sagittarius. So for the first time in 2 months, Mercury is changing signs. Keep in mind, Mercury typically changes signs every 2 to 3 weeks. So to have had a full 2 months of Mercury just in the one zodiac sign is a little unusual. And that's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to the sign change by Mercury this week. Before I go further with chatting about Mercury, my webinar, which is all about the astrology of 2025, is happening this weekend. I'll be sharing about the major astro events of the year ahead, including Jupiter moving into Cancer, Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries, Uranus touching into Gemini, and so much more. So if you would like some insight into the astrology of the year ahead, what it might look like, when it might be changing, how things might feel, I hope you can join us. For more details or to sign up, pop over to kellysastrology.com. So getting back to Mercury. So Mercury is leaving Sagittarius after 2 months and is moving into Capricorn. Now, this is an excellent sign change for Mercury. And the reason that it's a great sign change for Mercury is that it takes Mercury out of the sign of its detriment and into a more neutral place. You know, when we're talking in astrology about things that might change, that can lead to improvements, there are 2 ways that I kind of frame this happening. One way is when a planet is leaving a challenging or tricky place and coming into more neutral territory, just like Mercury is this week. Another way is when a planet is going from a neutral place into a really great place for it. And that was something I talked about in the previous episode in regards to Venus moving in to Pisces, the sign of her exaltation. So these are some kind of subtle differences when we think about things improving because something great is being added in, or something a little bit stressful or challenging is being taken out of the mix. So there are different ways to think about it. And in this instance with Mercury, we've got something that's a little bit stressy or a little scattering for Mercury that is changing. So we've got like a problem being removed or a little bit of a tendency that is causing an issue calming down. So that's a different way to think about Mercury changing signs this week as well. So Mercury coming into Capricorn, it is Wednesday, January 8th in most locations. This is going to help Mercury get back to a more practical kind of expression, and in turn is likely to help all of us kind of come back down to earth, get a little bit more grounded, especially around our plans, our thinking, our thought processes, and even into the conversations we're having. So you might notice that you're more aware of logistics or time constraints, or you're just more aware of what is a reasonable amount of things to do in a given time frame. With some of the other changes this week, we've got Mars retrograding back into Cancer. We've got the nodes changing signs. But I know we tend to check in with each other every week here on the podcast. And in the context of the weekly astrology, I think you will really notice Mercury changing signs. So that's why I picked Mercury to talk about for this week as well. It is very much like a mid-week mood shift that I think most of you are going to find is to your benefit or is helpful for you in some way. Mercury will be in kind of cool, calm, collected Capricorn for about 2.5 weeks. So Mercury moves into Capricorn January 8th and will stay in Capricorn until January 27th. So during that whole 2.5 week period while Mercury is in Capricorn, Mercury is going to be expressing a more earthy quality, and that might mean that you turn your attention to practical matters. You might be more realistic in your thinking or around your expectations. You might find that you're happy to work with what you have. And this can be contrasted to some of the Mercury and Sagittarius tendencies, which might have seen you restless to chase greener pastures, or instead of being practical, sort of having these grandiose or almost exaggerated ideas about things that you wanted to splurge on or overextend yourself for. So that overextending, that restlessness for change, or even that idea of like these really big, grand ideas, that is all changing this week as Mercury leaves Sagittarius and moves into Capricorn. Mercury in Capricorn is by its nature more serious and more cautious. And that might mean that you're taking some time to really review invitations that come in, or you're doing some research and you're really preparing and planning before you make a commitment, or even before you add something to your calendar. So with that serious kind of cautious quality of Mercury in Capricorn, how that can show up is someone who's really thoughtful, like, thanks for sharing that information or passing on that invitation. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you. You know, Mercury in Capricorn is very aware of like limits and is willing to take time so that when a commitment or an agreement is made, it is something that can really be stuck to or upheld over time. While Mercury is in Capricorn, it is going to be ruled by Saturn. And that is a big part of the mood shift of Mercury this week. For the last 2 months, Mercury has been in Sagittarius, a very optimistic, everything will work out, say yes to all the things kind of sign. And while Mercury was in Sagittarius, it was ruled by Jupiter, which we know is the big planet, the planet of enthusiasm and adventure and faith and purpose, of trusting in things working out. Now Mercury's coming to Capricorn, and because Saturn's 2 signs are sitting next to each other in the zodiac, so Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and in traditional astrology, Aquarius is also ruled by Saturn, we're actually going to have about 5 weeks with Mercury in one sign or another that is ruled by Saturn. So 2.5 weeks of Mercury in Capricorn and about another 2.5 weeks of Mercury in Aquarius. Different signs with a different vibe, but still with that Saturn rulership. So while Mercury is in Capricorn, it is ruled by Saturn. And so Mercury is kind of expressing a lot of Saturnian qualities in Capricorn. That means that we're getting connected to wisdom. We are drawing on our experience. We have got the voice of wisdom or reason from trusted elders around us, sharing their wisdom for us to benefit from. While Mercury is really influenced by Saturn, you too might notice that your attention goes to long-term plans or projects. So Mercury in Capricorn is thinking about time and thinking about logistics for an extended period. And so that means Mercury in Capricorn is really helpful for time management. That might mean over these next couple of weeks, you're really exploring time, how to use your time. You're getting honest and real with yourself about what you do with your time. So where does your time really go? How are you being useful with your time? How are you kind of frittering away your time? All of these ideas and thoughts and even some realizations about time are likely while Mercury is in Capricorn. So you might use this period to really get some insights about how to organize and structure your days and your weeks and your months, which is really how we express what we're doing with our time. So all of these sort of time management pieces are likely to be on your mind as Mercury is moving through Capricorn. With Mercury, which is our planet of thinking, now being in an earth sign, you might be thinking about matter and about tangible goods. You might be thinking about the stuff that you own, the money that you have, and how to organize this in a more efficient, practical, or kind of, with that idea of the long term in mind. You might want to simplify your space. Mercury in Capricorn, well, I should say Capricorn is kind of a minimalist. And so with Mercury here, you might be wanting to simplify or streamline your physical environment. It might mean that you're also being more intentional about what you do use that you have, and maybe being more honest with yourself about what you have that you don't use that maybe you shouldn't keep anymore, you don't need to keep anymore. So this idea of Mercury, which is about ideas and thinking, being in an earth sign, is that our mind and our thoughts are now sort of drawn to earth topics, which can be matter, tangible stuff, money, things we own, that type of thing. While Mercury's in Capricorn, it's going to make a few aspects, mostly later in its tour through Capricorn. But the aspect that I think is worth mentioning here is that while in Capricorn, Mercury will sextile Saturn, its ruler. That's going to happen around January 19. And Mercury sextile Saturn is a great aspect for making commitments, for signing a contract, for finalizing paperwork and agreements. So Mercury Saturn, we often hear about all the things we shouldn't do when Mercury isn't in great condition, like retrograde or what have you. But a kind of supportive Mercury sextile aspect like this one is really good for doing all those Mercury things. So, correspondence, communication, messages, emails, paperwork, all great to do. Deals, contracts, negotiation, finalizing and formalizing all kinds of agreements. Mercury sextile Saturn is really helpful for that. So January 19, you could take a day, before and after that period as well. January 18, 19, 20, generally really helpful for those kinds of things. So there are lots of practical pieces or qualities to Mercury in Capricorn, and that you might find that is really helpful with organization, with just managing your time and commitments, each day or each week. It's also very much about creating a solid foundation for what's to come. So it is about simplifying, but there's a preparation quality in this where I want to make sure I'm keeping up with what's really important, but I'm not being drained, distracted, or depleted by spending time and energy on things that aren't important. And so clearing things out is great to do with Mercury in a sign ruled by Saturn. Saturn is a sign about paring back, about coming back to core priorities and really defining for yourself about what is truly essential. So Mercury in this very grounded, practical place for a couple of weeks at the start of a new calendar year might be helpful for you to really clarify in your mind who and what is important and how you're going to express that in your calendar or in your schedule going forward. So there's lots of practical pieces we can do with Mercury in Capricorn. For me, though, I'm also just really looking forward to a quieter kind of Mercury, sort of a quieter mental vibe after the, at times over the top themes of Mercury and Sagittarius. Mercury and Sagittarius is quite loud. It's got this sort of brash, exaggerated quality. It's very enthusiastic, which can have us all, saying yes to things that are really stretching us. And that's been a lot for an extended period. We had a little over 2 months of Mercury in Sagittarius this time around. And normally we just have this 2.5 week period. So for me personally, one of the reasons I love this change, there's some technical reasons, Mercury moving out of the sign of its detriment into a more neutral place, but it's also an unusually long transit of Mercury coming to an end, which I think is going to help break some of the thought patterns or conversations or even just the general kind of patterns or habits that you find yourself falling into. So if you're into some habits with the kinds of things you're talking about with people or things you're doing every day that you want to change, Mercury changing signs can be really helpful for that. Kind of like we switch up our thinking, we can switch up some of our habits and attitudes as well. So Just to kind of do a quick recap on that Mercury in Sagittarius extended transit, Mercury has been in Sagittarius since early November. So early November to early January, this long Mercury in Sag period. And during that time, you might have noticed the topics of the Sagittarius house in your birth chart have been really busy. Maybe there's just been a lot going on. You felt pulled in many directions at once. Maybe there's been more of a scattered quality. Maybe there's been this kind of hyper, fast pace or just multiplicity kind of quality. And if that's the case, you too might breathe a sigh of relief as Mercury moves out of your Sagittarius sector and you get a chance to settle into a more manageable pattern around the Sagittarius parts of your chart and life. And if you haven't quite put that together about, oh yeah, Mercury has been in your Sag house for 2 months, including the retrograde. It's been an intensive focus on that part of your chart. It's maybe taken more of your energy, your time, and your attention. And now you get to kind of like get that to a more settled place and then shift your attention elsewhere. I'd love to hear how that extra long cycle of Mercury in Sagittarius was for you. Let me know any stories or experiences that you had in the comments below. And if you're tuning in to some wisdom or you're starting to make a really clear plan for the future now that Mercury has come into Capricorn, I'd love to hear that too. So let me know in the comments below. You can always find out even more about the astrology of the week ahead inside my Astrology Guide membership. In there, I'm sharing about that Mars retrograde into Cancer, the nodes changing signs, plus all the other astro events of this second week of January. You can pop over to the website to find out more details or to join the Astrology Guide membership. Thanks so much for joining me here, everyone. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, take care.